Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And just a couple of things coming up announcement-wise. We started something new, and some of you may have already participated in this, but instead of having a conference call series for Wellness 101, we've just condensed it into a nice, succinct conference call. The first one was last week. We got great feedback. People really liked the let's just cover the high points of this whole thing and then show me what to do and let me just do it. And so the next one of those, which is a 90-minute or thereabouts orientation, which just quickly reviews the eating plan and then skills for making it happen, is Wednesday, January 23rd at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on Thursday, January 24th, sports injuries with Dr. Inga Jolly. She's an osteopath. She's a graduate of our diet and lifestyle intervention course. And she's going to talk about common sports injuries. And when I say sports injuries, you don't have to be a professional athlete. If you just run or go to the gym or play soccer or basketball for fun, you're liable to have injuries at some point in time. She's going to talk about how you can avoid drugs and surgeries and keep working out. I think a lot of people think they just have to stop, and you really don't. And then on Monday, January 28th, our superstar chef, Del Schroef, will be talking about the winter soups and stews during conversations with Chef Del. You get recipes, and you get to ask him your other food-related questions, too. So I have two things I want to talk about today that I think are important. And one is diet and cognitive decline. And you're going to hear a lot about this year because Neal Barnard has a new book coming out about health and the brain and diet and how lifestyle affects it and all that sort of thing. So there will be more to talk about later, but it's amazing how much information is hitting the medical journals about this particular topic. I think, first of all, just to sort of frame my comments, the most devastating issue that a lot of people face in our country is loss of cognitive decline. And I know the older I get, the more importance I attach to my ability to think rather than my appearance. And I'm concerned about my appearance. I take good care of my body, but the reality is I'm aging. Never going to look like I'm 25 again, but I do think I'm getting a little smarter and wiser every year. So cognitive decline really affects people in negative ways, and I know it would terrify me if I thought I was becoming forgetful or couldn't think real clearly and that kind of thing. So the medical profession and the drug companies have really portrayed cognitive decline or Alzheimer's disease, which has become the catch-all term for anybody who's suffering from cognitive decline, as something that people are just destined to endure. Bad luck and heredity are the causes, and we're taught that genetics and genetic testing and drugs are the way that we might overcome it. But I don't really think that's true. I think that diet is the major culprit. The more I read, the more convinced I get. Listen to Neal Barnard talk about some lectures based on his upcoming book. I think he's very convincing. Just as with all other conditions, diet plays a major role. And the reason is that blood flow to the brain, which is how we get oxygen and nutrients to the brain, is affected by diet, and particularly by the dietary fat that most people in this country are consuming. Now, to talk about how this all happens, how does your diet affect the quality of your blood, and then how does that affect blood flow and cognitive ability? Blood viscosity means the thickness and the stickiness of your blood. Higher blood viscosity is associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, diabetes, and cognitive decline. Now, there are a lot of factors that influence blood viscosity, and one is dietary fat, another is hydration, but one that might surprise you is animal protein has also been shown to increase blood viscosity. So everybody who's out there eating low-fat dairy products and leaner chicken, think again if you think that's going to help you remain mentally sharp as you age. Blood should flow easily through the vessels, but viscous blood doesn't do that. A combination of vasoconstriction and increased blood viscosity results in damage to the endothelial tissue lining the blood vessels. And if you've listened to Dr. Esselstyn's lectures, you know that he talks about this. And this results in increased blood pressure. And then thickening of the blood vessels follows. The most common locations for this thickening are the curves and bifurcations of blood vessels. Thickening of the carotid intima media precedes plaque formation, and this in turn impairs blood flow to the brain. So you may have had trouble following that, but you know, I post all these on Health Briefs Online, usually a day or two after I deliver them in person like this. Viscosity also directly affects the brain. Abrasion of the walls of the capillaries in the brain cause thickening, and then this results in reduced entry of oxygen and nutrients into the brain, and also reduced ability of the cells to dispose of waste. And so in these ways, the brain is incredibly impacted by the food you put in your mouth every day. In fact, researchers with the Edinburgh Artery Study reported that in 452 elderly subjects, blood viscosity was a predictor of many types of cognitive decline, including Alzheimer's disease. Now, one thing you might be asking yourself is, gosh, how do I know if I have viscous blood? Well, I'll tell you how to find out. Keep a journal of everything you eat and drink for 3 or 4 days, and if you're not consuming a Wellness Forum diet, you probably have some viscous blood. And the more deviation from the Wellness Forum's diet, the more viscous the blood, and the more problems you're going to have. So, another reason to convert to a high-fiber, low-fat, plant-based diet comprised of whole foods. Now, while we're on the subject of fat and diet and that sort of thing, I read these articles every once in a while, and they're written generally by people who promote a diet unlike the one we promote here, that report that Americans are consuming less fat and that fat consumption has been declining over a long period of time. And so obviously fat in the diet's not the problem, because while fat consumption has been going down, disease rates have been going up, and so the whole implication is the promoters of the animal food diet are right, people like me got it all wrong. Well, you know, it's amazing how you can manipulate and misreport information, and that's the case here. So I'm going to try and clear it up, and I'll try to avoid throwing out too many numbers here, but the USDA Economic Research Service is one way to get some pretty good information on American eating patterns and how they change over a period of time. And between 1970 and 2003, according to one of their reports, calorie consumption increased by 523 calories a day. My gosh, no wonder we're gaining weight. That was about a 16% increase. And during that same time, there was a 63% increase in the consumption of fats and oils. So our consumption of fat increased much more dramatically than overall calorie consumption. So much for the idea that calorie consumption or that fat consumption has been actually going down. Now, there's another report, a little more recent from ERS, that looks at the period of time that spans between 77 and 78 on up to 2005 and 2006. And it does show a slight decrease in the consumption of dietary fat as expressed as a percentage of calories. But listen to this. It was 39.7% and it dropped to 33.4%. That's not a very big drop. And it hardly represents what we would call a significant reduction. Now, to put that into context, remember, the lowest it got, 33.4%. Dr. Esselstyn's diet's between 9 and 11% fat. Wellness Forum, a little bit more liberal, at 15% fat. We're talking over 2 times that amount of fat that we recommend in the Wellness Forum's diet. Now, an analogy that I've heard Dr. Esselstyn use, I'm going to borrow it here because I think it really works well, might help you understand why these minor reductions in fat don't amount to much. Let's use accidents, for example. Let's say that every time you put crash dummies in a car and you have the car hit a building going 80 miles an hour, the damage is such that if there were real people in the car, that they would die. All right? So let's set up a hypothetical experiment. Now we're going to put crash dummies in the car and get the car going 70 miles an hour, and it hits the building. And so the crash dummies and the damage indicate that had there been real people in the car, they would have died. So one thing that you could report is apparently reducing speed doesn't make any difference. Well, that's technically true, but the reality is that let's look at how much speed you'd have to reduce in order to actually reduce the damage and the death rate. You might have to get down to 20 miles an hour. So the issue isn't that reducing speed doesn't work. The issue is how much speed do you have to reduce in order to get the effect. And so it is with fat consumption. You know, nutrition research has been plagued with study design that results in people making insignificant reductions in fat that just don't make any difference, and changes in their diet that are insignificant and don't make any difference, and then people report, well, changing the diet doesn't matter. The truth is that it does, but in order to enjoy the benefits of either fat reduction or dietary change, you have to make the right type of change, and that is converting to a Wellness Forum style diet. So That's all for now. As usual, please pass this on to anybody who you think might enjoy watching it, and I'll be back to you again on Thursday.